Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency. It's Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, and welcome everybody. The first order of business, let's see, I just want to say I think Jennifer Tavares is at an economic summit and is probably on the way, but I'd like to get us going. And I believe Leslyn McBean Claiborne has a family issue out of town, so I believe she's excused. We are being live streamed. This is the modern age, and we have now gone online. So just keep that in mind if you're in view of the camera. First order of business is privilege of the floor. Yeah, for those who have signed a blue sheet, I'm going to call you up. If you'd like to speak, the blue sheets are to my right over here. You have 3 minutes, and just follow the rules of the legislature for speaking. The first person is Alex Highland.
Hello, good evening, afternoon. Nice to see you all. It's been a little while since I've been here. So, you know, I've been coming here for about 6 years now, on and off, asking for a local labor policy. And it's kind of dawned on me that, you know, we've had to have studies, we've had to get data, you know, and last month the city of St. Louis addressed this issue. Their IDA is mandated to simply pay the prevailing wage for the construction trade. And this makes it very easy on you guys because it's a hands-off approach, and it means that if someone wants to come into town, they can't undercut wages. If they want to bring in people who are more productive and better tools and they can win on that way, then all the power to them. Then that would be on us for local people for losing that work. However, I think this is an approach whose time has come for discussion because the idea of defining local and gathering data has become very cumbersome, and it very much feels to those of us like myself who's out of work currently as a local electrician, that would be let us actually have a fair competition on a level playing field. And if we lose it, that's on us. That means we need more training, and that would be a good interim solution, because I feel if we don't start discussing that, we're going to be having another year to 5, 6 of, well, we need data, well, maybe there aren't enough local, and excuses. So I think that's something we really need to consider, at least as a stopgap for the next few years until everyone here has enough data that they're satisfied they can come up with an alternative plan. Now, I understand there's developers here today who are asking, you know, going to be asking for another tax abatement. Now, I've seen these developers come to these meetings and say, oh, we're going to make our best effort to hire local labor. And then I look what's happening at Library Place and the unemployment we have locally, and them bringing in their out-of-town people. So I urge you to ask them for a binding commitment on local labor before you give them anything subsidized by myself and the other taxpayers of this county. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you. Jane McFeeters.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to speak in favor of the City Harbor development and ask that you consider the plan that they're asking for. You probably know that I served as the president of the Chamber of Commerce from 2000 to 2014. And one of the things that I'm proudest of during that time is the work that the city and the Chamber did to develop the Waterfront Trail. One of the reasons that the Chamber truly supported the Waterfront Trail was not solely for recreation, though we thought that was important. We thought the transportation aspects of it for people on bicycles and walkers were very important, but we thought it was an opportunity for development along the waterfront that would increase the tax base in the city. And the city is having a very difficult time because so much of the city is not taxed. Because of universities, colleges, and many, many not-for-profits in the center of the city. I think this development really to me, it's exactly what the Waterfront Trail is supposed to do. First of all, it enhances the Waterfront Trail by adding to it. It puts in some parks in that area. It's nestled in an area that has gotten no real use over the years, except for storing boats for a lot of that. And it will supply additional housing, which I think is tremendously needed, particularly in the city. I also think this is very likely to attract older couples and bring them back into the city and free up other housing in the city itself, but also throughout the county that can be used by people who desperately need housing. So I'm very much in support of this. I think it's exactly what should be done in that area. I'm very hopeful that also at some point when TCAT moves, that that additional area can be used productively in a similar fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Fairbanks.
Good afternoon. I am Paul Fairbanks, and I'm a member of the Friends of Newman, and I'm speaking on behalf of our group. And we're here to support the request for the tax abatement as well. Friends of Newman is an organization that was established to preserve, enhance, and promote the golf course, which is right next door to this development. And we've been working very closely with the City Harbor folks and the city around some issues on how the development would affect us. And we've had nothing but positive interactions with them and have been able to solve some pretty complex problems about how the development will affect the green. So we're really happy with our relationship with them. I want to also say that Phase 1 is not as much of an impact on the golf course as Phase 2 in terms of the potential for a new clubhouse community center, which we're really excited about. I don't know how many of you have visited the Newman golf course, but the clubhouse is, shall we say, held up by duct tape and toothpicks to some extent. It's definitely in need of some serious repair. A community center in that area with 300 residents living in that neighborhood would be a really nice opportunity for neighborhood development, for community connections. The community center would serve the boating community and it would serve the golf course, so it's a multi-use building. They're talking about having a center in the middle to have meetings for, not conventions, but more small group meetings and events, that type of thing. So I also would like to say that we support this because we think it's really important for the city to continue to have urban density. We really believe that having people in the neighborhoods, not being as dependent on cars is a really important thing, and having 300 people who could go to restaurants and walk on the trails and go to the farmer's market is a really good idea. Secondly, we think that the tax abatement's really a fair thing for the community to do when the developers are putting up a lot of money in order to, with a lot of risk. It's kind of it balances the scales a little bit to give them some room to make their investment, get the project off the ground, and we see that as really important as well. We also hope that it does in fact bring a lot of labor into work for people like electricians and plumbers, and I certainly support what you're saying in terms of let's have people who work here, live here, work on this project. And I would ask the developers to consider what you were asking for. And then lastly, I'd like to just applaud the City Harbor's effort for going green and using the heating source plant. They're going to use the heat water from the waste treatment plant to heat the building. So that's really in line with the city's proposed green initiative. So I hope that you'll consider supporting this tax abatement, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I know Leslyn has joined us. Welcome. Thank you for coming. One more speaker is Todd Brewer.
Hello. Thank you for letting me speak this afternoon. I'm Todd Brewer. I'm the business manager for Electricians in Ithaca. I represent 250 members there. And I'm the building trade president for Tompkins, Cortland County. We represent over 3,000 members. I've heard Alex speak and the other gentleman just spoke. I agree with them completely. It looks like beautiful plans you have set up here, a great opportunity. All I'm asking is if we're giving tax subsidies, it'd just be nice to have local labor, a language attached to something. Whether it's union or non-union, it's just local labor. It's just people that live within the community, that are raising their families here, that hopefully will be using some of the amenities here. That's all. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it's just like economics 101. If we support the people that live here, they're going to be spending their money here. And I don't mean to insult anybody with that. It just seems to me, it just seems like basic economics, try to support the people that live here and hopefully be able to rent apartments or condos in these places too. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the IDA? And I see Jennifer Tavares has joined us as well. Welcome.
Hi.
How did the conference go this morning?
It was amazing.
I saw a little bit of it.
Being there.
Yeah. Well, I saw my little piece of it, but it seemed to be really busy. It was good.
Well,
Yep. Okay, any additions to the agenda? We have one item of new business, the City Harbor application, and I believe there's some representatives in the audience. And Heather, I'll turn it over to you to do an introduction, but I'd ask them to come get ready to present.
okay, so what you have in your agenda packet is a full application for the City Harbor project. This is phase 1 of their project, and I tried to be brief in my benefits memo in outlining all the benefits of the project. What we are looking for today is an acceptance of the application and moving it on to a public hearing. One of the pieces in the back of the application and attachment is the proposed incentive structure, which may look a little bit new to you. This is the proposed enhanced energy incentive, 10-year incentive for larger residential projects that was proposed by Tatum Engineering. It is actually a little bit less incentive than our previous enhanced energy incentive by the numbers, but the team here has very much embraced the proposed requirements of that plan, is planning to meet the 2025 requirements of the city's Ithaca green, they're calling it the stretch code, the stretch code. So I just wanted to draw your attention to how I structured that in terms of the 10-year abatement with the enhanced energy. What I'm going to do is introduce Elizabeth Ambrose, who is going to give an overview of the project for the board. And you're welcome to stand or to join us at the table, whatever you're most comfortable with.
We can bring you a chair. I think that's on the way.
Yeah. Because there's new information, we don't have that. That's not like that.
Just use the microphone. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the privilege of having us today. I'm Elizabeth Ambrose, a native Ithacan, and my partner group is the Edgers, Jody and Jessica Edger, Nick and Costa Lambro, and they are here today. This is Costa, Nick. Jason feels like a partner. He's a numbers guy, and Lincoln is sitting in the audience right there. I'm really happy. I just want to start out, it's a little off script, but the gentleman that spoke, I'm sorry. Alex and Tom? Todd. I want to say that I think you're going to be happy about what I'm about to say. The Edgers are builders, and they're not only builders, but they're partners in this project. And they're from Elmira, and they're considered local. I think that they're planning on making their home here in Ithaca. So they are generally used to using local labor. So they're all about that. So I think this is you're gonna find that, to us, it's a big advantage of having a partner that's actually a builder and knowing the ways of labor and how to build things and bring things to fruition. What is now a gravel surface, if you can turn your attention to the on the left is what we're looking at now, and what we're planning on doing is transforming this to a lively urban waterfront community. In the past, unless you were a customer of Johnson Boatyard Marina, you wouldn't have had access to this amazing piece of property, this amazing land. It's a natural resource that we have here in Ithaca, and we have, I think, being a native here, I have visitors all the time that will come and say, why isn't there more action in life on the waterfront? You guys have this beautiful lake, and we never know what the answer should be on that, but now we do. City Harbor. With your help, we'll create a lively urban experience on Cayuga's waterfront where people can live, eat, and play. We're literally creating something for everyone. I want to repeat that. We are creating something for everyone. City Harbor will allow Ithaca residents to live along a spectacular stretch of Cayuga waterfront where not a single person currently resides. We believe our residents will be mostly intergenerational, empty nesters, retirees, professionals, and basically, we're creating places without stairs, access to medical buildings, offices, services, and restaurants. We understand this beautiful asset comes with responsibility. And should be enjoyed by many, not just a few. That's why the ownership group is willing and able to invest substantial resources in creating a 1,700 linear foot promenade, which invites public to enjoy destinations along the way. In addition to building the promenade, we are making substantial investments to create the following. As you can see, I don't know if you have a little red thing.
Do the mouse, if there's a mouse there, it should work. There you go.
Does it click forward? Well, as you can see, that zigzag right there at the right is in the corner. There you go. That will be.
Trail, basically, just.
Yeah, sure.
The trail runs from right here on Willow Ave. Oh, yes, the red button. Oh, cool. Can everyone see this one? Okay, so the trail, it's kind of highlighted by this red line that somehow stops, but it basically runs along the entire perimeter of the property. And it connects to the current waterfront trail, which is right here, runs along Willow, and it takes a right to go kind of behind the golf course over the footbridge. And then along, Elizabeth will talk briefly about little parks and little special areas along this promenade, which is what we're calling it, in between buildings, in between proposed buildings, and things that will stay there even through phase 2. So the parks that we're talking about will not be replaced when an eventual phase 2 is built. Those parks will remain. Just that.
Yes. So the Meadow Park that Costa was just pointing out is, just to get a reference, is comparable in size to Tompkins Park in Fall Creek, which to me was surprising. I had to actually go down there and say, wow, this is a significant piece of land that will have, the public will have access to. The terrace parks with lawns at different levels connecting to the public transit. I don't know if you can show that. That's there's another slide. Does it click forward? Okay.
We're stuck here.
The Point Club Plaza, where the pedestrians can enjoy views of Cayuga Lake and the farmers market. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. There'll be public restaurants and cafes. I'm just sort of giving a hit list of the things that will be public amenities that everyone will be able to enjoy, not just the residents that live at City Harbor. Tour boats and possible venues for entertaining and celebrations. I think this is going to be a place where people will go to be, proposed, get a proposal, or, have a celebration of all kinds of things, anniversaries or whatnot, and we need need those places, beautiful romantic places on the water. This new access will invite Ithacans and tourists a new way to enjoy a vibrant urban waterfront experience. We believe this is where Ithaca's future lies. And why we're here, and why should City Harbor receive tax incentives? The ownership group is local and has a proven track record of success when it comes to envisioning, planning, and translating complex housing projects into reality. So we have the experience among us to make this happen. We're members of this community. We raise our kids here. We shop here. We pay taxes here. We're not out-of-town investors sort of looking for the next hot spot to park cash and then leave quickly or a few years later. We're in it for the long haul. In fact, this owner group all sort of questioned each other and said, "What are you in? Are you in this for the long haul?" And we're all in it to see our grandchildren enjoy this beautiful asset. And there's a reason this land has not been developed before now. It's extraordinarily expensive to build on. This is technically a challenging site. It requires us to raise the elevation of approximately 1 feet. I think it's a little bit higher in some areas and lower in another. But if you can imagine raising 4 acres of land, approximately 12 inches, it's a lot. And I didn't realize until I talked to our partners, the Edgers, what that takes to do that. Also, the pilings that we have to drive, high-capacity pilings nearly 100 feet down in order to support the proposed building foundation. This project is a heavy lift, and it's expensive, and we're going to need help to fulfill its potential. I'm thrilled to announce that we are doing something truly innovative. We're doing what's never been done in our area before. We're finalizing plans to utilize the effluent discharge from the nearby wastewater treatment facility to reduce the carbon footprint of the building's heating and cooling systems. Now that little piece was written by our friend Walter Hang. And believe it or not, he will be coming before you to speak in favor of this project, which is a big thing, I think, right? So in conclusion, City Harbor is making a substantial investment in non-income producing public amenities. We'll create 175 construction jobs, over 100 indirect jobs, and add millions of dollars to our local Ithaca economy, and ultimately generate over $700 a year in new property taxes.
700 or?
700,000.
700,000.
Did I say $700?
Said
Oh,
700.
well, add a few zeros. All right, I'm a little nervous. So, and we ask for your consideration for a tax incentive for this project. Together, we can create a beautiful housing options, new public spaces, and access to Cayuga's beautiful waterfront with amenities for everyone to enjoy for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nick.
Nick, did you want to say anything? If you can pull a microphone up.
Hello. I think many of you were here when I joined with Gary and we built Seneca Place on the Commons. If you remember, it was a 1-story, 100 by 100-foot building that we only owned half of. Beam Travel was in there. And, downtown wasn't really doing much, if you recall, in those days. That was only 15 years ago. And Seneca Place happened with a lot of work and planning. I mean, 9/11 attacks occurred, stock market meltdowns, interest rates were 7% and 8% at that time. And, we live in a high-tax state. It's the tool we have to turn things around. Ithaca doesn't get grants. We've tried. They keep saying, oh, you don't need it. Yes, we do, but we don't get them. So at the time, some folks were a little upset about the tax abatement for Seneca Place on the Commons because the way it was designed was it would pay the first year the same amount in taxes as the building that existed, the little 100 by 100-foot building. It's about 20 grand, I think, at that time. Right, Gary, I think. Today, I'm pretty sure that property pays about $400,000 a year now. And not only that, but look what happened after that. was built. You got the Marriott, you back did this gateway, you revitalized the warehouse. Ithaca Hotel, or Hotel Ithaca, had to redo their whole plan. INHS built a housing just down the street across from DeWitt Place, or the DeWitt Mall. And now you've got the Lubin project, you got City Center. All these things, I think, happened because of the Seneca Place, and the tax abatement was huge. So I think the same thing will happen in the water here. And we're ready to go. We're well into site plan and design, and it's just key. And I think if we're the first to start it, other things will follow. I mean, I can't really say we're the first. Actually, the Art House for affordable housing project is happening now at the water. So they came because I think of us. So that's what I think will happen. So thank you very much for your time.
And is it Jason?
I mean, all I have to say is this is going to be a transformational project. And I think when it's all said and done, not only will the owners have something to be incredibly proud of, but so will the city and its community, because they're putting a substantial amount of money into public benefits such as the promenade that Elizabeth talked about. So it's going to be transformational and an amazing project for everybody.
Okay. Any questions? Yeah, stay there. Yeah, Martha.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. And I know just a little bit about how much work has gone into this. I do have a few questions, and I'm not sure Jennifer can see the middle panel there. And so does that show phase 2, I assume?
No, the middle one, sorry. The middle one is an effluent diagram to show how the building interacts with the water leaving the plant. It's actually, the building is actually like exploded. The top 4 floors are pulled off. Yeah.
I thought, they're going to do another building behind that. Okay, all right.
So phase 2, just so everyone knows, if I still have the laser thing real quick, would just build a building on top of this parking lot here. So much like this building here, the second building of phase 1, phase 2 will be a third building.
Okay, why don't you, if you would walk us through what's phase 1 and then what's phase 2?
I wish.
And where's the golf clubhouse fit?
So this is showing just phase 1, where this is a parking lot to serve the restaurants, some golfers, the boaters. It's really a mixed-use parking lot. Not much happens to the golf course in this plan except for moving of the 9th green because it's a little bit too close to parked cars, and including the clubhouse, which stays like it is. Phase 2, when we build this third building here, which is a little bit more up in the air, we will see a lengthening of this parking lot for the golfers and hopefully a rebuilding of the community center and a few more changes to the 9th green.
And is the Guthrie building part of phase 2, or is that separate?
Guthrie Building's right here. They're not under this package applying for anything, but they will build concurrently with phase 1.
Okay, and then, so in phase 1, nothing happens to the clubhouse?
No.
Okay. I have a couple really little but important questions. So in this picture, it looks like the willow tree stays.
There's 2 willow trees that
Two
stay.
willow trees? Okay, so one of them goes and one of them stays?
Yep. 2 of them stay.
2 of them stay?
Yep.
Wait, you said there are 2.
There's 3 there.
There are 3.
Yep.
One of them goes, 2 of them stay.
Yep.
That's pretty good, okay. Because when we talked a year ago, neither of them stayed, so that's...
Right, yes.
None of them stayed, okay.
We made a best effort to keep them all. The third one, which is close to the building, obviously interacts with the building in a way we can't have. But we've also had the city forester take a look at it. And willow trees generally don't live past 75 years. These are way past their life expectancy. And not my words, she said they were junk trees. So
Very beautiful.
they're beautiful.
They're beautiful, junk.
I'd like to add to that, too. And Lincoln, sitting in the crowd, could speak to this, too, but last year, actually, one of them, a significant portion of it fell
Don't hold
away.
the microphone.
thought that was my
a
fault.
significant portion of it fell in the lake, so it's, the one that we're, talking about getting rid of is a health and safety issue at this
Okay.
point in time.
I hear you. So then the other thing is, and so the diagram with the effluent pipes, I thought, oh, good, they're planning for a bridge to the farmer's market. So now you're saying, no, that's underwater. So I know you've applied for state money.
Yep.
It's been really frustrating.
Very.
Now, it just, when you're standing at the farmer's market and you see the other side of the inlet, it's like, I want to walk there, right? It's like from here to the wall.
Right.
So I understand you've already got a lot of amenities. Is it possible to build the promenade so that in the future you like have the abutment for a pedestrian bridge at least? I mean, can that be factored in just so it's kind of ready? I don't know.
Roughly the building split where you would make one land on the other side, if you can see the closest in picture, kind of right here. So certainly it's a possibility in the future. It would obviously require a lot of city cooperation, mostly financially, and also state grants. We've been unsuccessful 2 years in a row, as you know, with state grants. So
I know, and it just seems like, especially if you want this really to be a walkable neighborhood, that would make a huge difference.
we agree.
We would love that.
Way up high.
We would have an issue with sailboat mass, but typically sailboats don't go up the creek. It's just powerboats. So
That or a ferry boat, whatever.
It's a great opportunity for businesses to emerge from this. Think about lime boats, right? Going from place to place and someone could create a nice little business of ferrying back and forth. And
Okay, let's keep moving.
Thank you.
We'll move on from lime boats. We'll have all sorts of issues. Laura?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, and the materials are extensive and describe a lot of this project, which is very exciting. I'm particularly excited about the use of the effluent from the wastewater treatment facility. I think that's a very creative response, creative solution to issues that will be provide a benefit for everyone, for City Harbor, for the city and the plant. A couple of questions. On page 12, I just want to understand occupancy. You've checked the box, facility for aging. Can you help me understand what that means?
Well, let's see. We envision this community to be, I think this is one of the reasons why my partners invited me into this project is we think that it will probably be a lot of empty nesters, retirees, and they will love living here so much that they will end up wanting to stay and possibly, age in place. In the beginning, I see a lot of, intergenerational residents that will live there, professionals and retirees and empty nesters. So I think there will be a mix at first, but I would suspect in the future it might be, just like all of us, the population is aging, so. I don't know that we're not planning on doing any kind of assisted living that requires a licensure from the state, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, that was in part what I was asking. Can
Yeah.
I ask a few other questions? In terms of accessible units for anyone with any mobility issues, can you comment on that? Any universal design?
all the units will have accessible bathrooms. There's obviously elevators in the buildings, so there won't be any stairs. So it should be accessible. Every unit, in fact, should be.
And all units?
There's a difference between the universal design and so there'll probably be some units that'll be specifically for, residents that might be in a wheelchair, but not all. But they will be designed with, 30-foot, 30-inch, doorways and things like that.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have more, Laura?
Yeah.
One more, okay.
One more. In terms of local labor and living wage, and thank you for responding to those who spoke before your presentation. I appreciate that. On page 13, it's page 17. I see two page numbers, so I'm not sure which. Yeah, it's agenda versus the application, the packet. In response to the question, are you willing to pay a livable wage as defined by AFCU to all employees during the duration of the abatements? You check yes. And on the following page, will you use contractors who pay a prevailing wage? I believe you've checked no. And so I just want to understand that. And that may be my misunderstanding, but if you can help me.
I think there's a distinction between the construction phase of the project, perhaps, or we thought there was, and when we actually hired the 4 people to run the building and maintain the building. That might be the confusion there. We've agreed that, for example, the leasing manager, maintenance personnel will be paid the living wage. I think the second question refers more to construction.
It says construction.
Hold on. Okay. Answer? You good, Laura?
Yeah.
Okay, John?
Just, that particular question actually relates to Alex's comments earlier. Prevailing wage is a legally defined wage by trade defined by the state that's typically in line with what like union laborers make, but often is more than, a non-unionized laborer would make in the same position. I have a question about the ongoing ownership and operation of the boat slips that are there. As a member of the boating community a long time ago myself, I know sometimes it can be hard to get a boat slip in this town. Who will own and operate those boat slips, and to whom will they be rented? Are those going to be something that's, you have to live in the building to get access to the non-transient slips, or is that going to be for the public? And can you sort of fill us in a little bit about that?
So there's 7 to 10 transient slips, which will be held strictly for visitors, we envision, unless they really don't get used. That's for like people from Canada, anyone who uses, because we're connected, through the Erie Canal to basically anywhere. The rest of the slips are in the process of being rebuilt actually right now, and they'll be rented just like they are now. Certainly, as the buildings fill up, if people want a boat and they live there, they'll be given some priority. But by no means will we keep slips empty or kick people out if they're loyal paying customers. And actually, we've taken quite a bit of, we spend a lot of effort making sure that the current boaters who know it as Johnson's Boatyard continue to feel welcome there.
Okay. Leslyn, did you have a question?
I did. I actually had a question about housing. I was going to ask for some more information about what kind of housing is going there. So Laura had some of it. You started to answer. So I'm interested in hearing some more about the housing units. What sort of price points are we looking for? Rental versus ownership, et cetera, et cetera. So if you can just expand more in housing in general, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. The housing, there'll be 4 rent units at this point. We are not planning in any for sale at the moment. Certainly what you're looking at will be 4 rent apartment units, market rate. First, like mostly 2 bedrooms, but there are some 1 bedrooms mixed in there, and there'll be, starting at high 1,000s, under 2 for a 1, and somewhere in the 2s for 2. I'll start.
And about how many units? I missed that.
96 units.
96?
96 in phase 1.
Phase 2.
Phase 2, I believe, is 54, 64. It's a total of 154, and I can't do the math right now. I'm sorry. And there is, and I might get in trouble for saying this, there's a possibility that phase 2 is for sale condo units. It's just New York State financing those is very difficult.
Okay. Martha, I think you were up. Jennifer, did you have a question?
Not right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I was pointing out that it was for specifically construction labor, Laura's question. And the thing about aging, facility for aging, I have a feeling this is part's a state form, Heather, right? And I think that's specifically, that means, is it a nursing home or assisted living or something? So it seems to me that's probably not,
Mistake.
that shouldn't be checked.
We have no intention of having any kind of assisted living. However, there will be, eventually, we've created space for a home care agency to have its office.
No, right, but I think on that form, right, isn't that a state?
Yeah, it's a specific definition, which I wouldn't expect everyone to get, so I can have them modify the application.
Yeah, so I think that's page 8 or 12, depending upon what page number you're looking at. In terms of ownership, we've talked about this, and I wonder if sometimes one of the problems of condo development in New York State is the Attorney General's offering plan, where you have to describe the doorknobs and the light switches. But it seems after something is built and you have the thing, that's much easier. So I wonder if, a long-term plan might be that as these, if you could develop a program where residents could, say, rent to buy, something like that, or that they could convert after a renter leaves, maybe it might be available for sale. We really are seeing no condo development, no ownership development in the city, and it's really a big need.
It does increase build costs. It's a little bit more stringent, the code, when you build condos for sale. But certainly, if that's a possibility, we can look into it.
Okay. Mike?
This will take a little bit, I'm sorry. I was hoping maybe you could take us through all the public spaces that are part of this, because I'm looking at the map here, and if you'll allow me, when I read them off, if you could point to them,
Yes.
that would be great.
Can I move that one to the center, actually?
That's exactly what I'm looking at.
And pull it forward just a little bit.
Thank you.
Go ahead, keep bringing it in front of us. Perfect. Can you see that, Jennifer?
Yeah.
This is one of the slides that Ina sent us, so.
Can you stand up there and point?
This is red laser.
Or you can use the pointer, whatever you want to do. I mean, how many chances to get to use a laser? I know, I'm very excited. This is what I'm saying.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm just looking here at Point Park, right? So that's up left-hand side, yep. So what's north of that? Or not north, what's more, it's kind of shaded, it looks like it's in the water there. Yeah, kind of that way, going towards the top of the.
So that's city property, but it's currently got 12 boat slips on it, owned by the city, leased back to half Johnson's, which is what we are formally, and the other half is Finger Lakes. So it's not our land.
Right, but Point Park, that'll be new public space.
Yes.
And then if I'm taking you down the Riverwalk, there's this patio here. Right? Yeah, well, I mean, on the one side of the building, Point West.
Yep.
And it's got little X's on it on my map, but what's that for, that patio?
That's a dining patio for the restaurant, which will be on that corner of the building.
Gotcha. And then you come over to the steps?
Yep, that's a more public area. You're obviously not required to eat at the restaurant to sit there.
You have beautiful renderings of this over
Yes.
to the left. That's a really nice.
Actually, right here is the dining patio.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. And then so past the steps, then you're going to go to the Point Stroll, which takes you out to the parking lots, it looks like.
In between the two buildings, yes. Yep.
Now, that parking must be public, right? Because you have to get to the restaurant somehow, you need a place to park.
Yes, you're correct.
Gotcha.
Where's the public parking?
There are a few spots in this little turnaround here. Most of them will be handicap and drop-off spots, as well as a couple that will be shared between the golf course and the restaurant.
So the existing clubhouse, even though you're going to work with the golf club, obviously. I can consider that public space. I mean, you're going to enhance that public space. There's a parking lot then off to the right of that. That's public parking, I would guess, right?
Yes.
Then you go to Point East, I'll go back down, then it looks like you've got the Riverwalk, well, it's the waterfront promenade, so that's all public space, and then the Garden Walk.
The garden walk is in between the building and the parking lot, which will become Phase 2.
Right, and it is, well, I'm not going to even talk about that as parking, because I assume you're going to do Phase 2 eventually.
Right.
You keep going down the promenade. There's parking, though, behind that parking lot, which will be Phase 2. Is that public parking, or is that residential parking?
So a lot of the larger parking, I think you're referring to that lot right there.
Yep.
A majority of that is actually owned by Guthrie Medical Group. They have a very large parking requirement. The property itself splits kind of like this. Sorry, I'm shaking a little. So a few of those spots will be public or shared, but we're starting to also get into some residential parking.
Gotcha. And is there any discussion with Guthrie that when Guthrie's closed, I mean, they're not that's not going to be a 24-hour operation, is it? Guthrie office?
Nope, it should be 9 to 5 or thereabout. And there is discussion to share the parking specifically with the farmers market because it's a great connected to the waterfront trail there, but certainly other things as well.
Right. So like maybe on a weekend, you make it public parking?
Correct.
Or something. Okay, cool. As long as the discussions are going on, that's great. So then keep going down the promenade, then we hit Meadow Park.
Meadow Park's the largest one, similar in size to Tompkins Park.
Yep, and that'll be public space, obviously.
Right.
You have more parking, which is that Guthrie, or is that part of your thing?
This other little triangular shaped thing is Guthrie parking, but then there's parking also along the road, parallel parking. That'll be for primarily used by boaters and folks who use the kayak launch, which is the last piece there.
That thing that's the gray thing.
Right there?
No, up, off to the up, right there.
That's Guthrie Medical Group.
It's a darker shaded gray. It's like a little box. It looks like a...
Right there?
Where's the button? Lines. Right there.
That's a raised crosswalk.
All right, thanks. And so then we're going through Meadow Park, we keep going down the promenade, and then we hit Paddle Park.
Right. Yep.
And that'll be where you can launch boats and, okay, cool.
Launch kayaks, yeah. It'll be. That's actually also accessible. There's a ramp built actually to the water's edge.
Yep, I'm looking at that's okay, cool. So did I hit most of the major public space?
You did. You hit them.
All right, cool.
Apart, of course, from Newman Golf Course, which
Right, which
exists there
as
now.
part of this project, that's going to be enhanced, basically.
Right.
Cool.
Thank you.
Those are my main questions.
Okay, I'm going to jump in with some comments. One, I wanted to really thank, is it Mr. Fairbanks, for coming in from Newman Golf Course. I really like how this project will dovetail with the golf course. I've played that course many times, very poorly, but it's a really nice golf course. It's a real good community asset, and one thing you haven't mentioned is that you can walk out along the water, along the golf course, all the way out to the lighthouse that's on the lake. And I really think that's an undeveloped walkway that I could see getting developed in connection with this project getting completed. But the interaction, I think this will really help the golf course do a lot of good stuff for the community. So I'd throw that in. Laura, you had further.
Yeah, thank you. Just to give you another opportunity to play with the cool laser pointer. Yes. Can you show where you're in discussions with TCAT for bus stop?
Lincoln? I think, if I'm correct,
There's two of them, Costa. There's one there where the convergence of...
it actually says bus stop. Yeah.
And one right by the entrance to Guthrie.
So there's one here and one here. Yeah.
Great.
One by Guthrie.
Okay, Martha?
I think Jennifer just answered. So up in the upper corner here
Yep.
that's an existing, what is that?
That is not owned by us. It's a mixed-use building. There's some boating functions, there's a CrossFit, and there's Carina Construction, I believe. Most of it's under power lines, so you can't really build anyway.
All right. This is very complete, and I know you've been through a lot of different municipal meetings and conversations. I really obviously wish the rental prices would be lower. But I know this is a really tough site, and certainly do appreciate all the public amenities, and there's no free lunch. So I appreciate this. I certainly will vote to send it to public hearing.
Thanks, Martha.
Leslie?
So I do want to echo Martha's sentiments about the rental prices, and hopefully you can if possible, figure out a way, like we'll try to figure out a way for ownership, the potential of figuring out a way for some of the units to be a little lower in price, not exorbitant. I'm not asking for low income, but I am asking for a little lower in price. It doesn't have to be that many of them, so there's the potential that, other folks who don't make as much money can enjoy this facility as well. So I would encourage your thought on that, too.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Martha.
Sorry, I want to ask Heather to explain the table here. So they're asking for an energy the 10-year energy abatement, and that's the 2 years at 100%, then 90, then 80, et cetera, right?
Yes.
And under that regimen, the taxes paid is the first box, and then taxes abated. Okay. What's the middle?
So you've got new taxes paid and the existing taxes. So the existing value would be 2.175. So those are the existing taxes that would continue to be paid, and then the new taxes you can see would be phasing in over that 10-year period.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Tell me where you are, because I'm trying to follow you here.
So you've got the year, the abatement, and then there's these taxes paid under county, city, and school. Those are the new taxes. The next column is the total of those, the new taxes that will be paid, and then the next column is existing taxes on that existing base. And we didn't used to look at that number, but about mid-year last year, I started adding that in because it speaks to part of that cost-benefit analysis that these are actual taxes that they're paying, that they will continue to pay.
And can you go back to the energy abatement schedule and walk me through that again? So year one.
So year one would be 100% of the new value. So you can see in the new taxes paid column, there would be zero, just those existing taxes on the base assessment. And then year two would be 100%, and then it declines over the ensuing 8 years, 90, 80, 70, 60.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, John?
I just wanted to follow on that with a quick comment. I heard a couple of commenters at the beginning of the meeting use the word subsidy to describe the abatement, and I think that this has been a persistent confusion about what exactly we do here. This is a really expensive project that y'all are putting a ton of money into, and it's my assumption, based on looking at the pro forma data, that absent this abatement, it's unlikely that you would be able to accomplish this project as it's conceptualized. Is that accurate?
100%.
And just taking a look at that table in our agenda, which, if the commenters have access to our agenda packet, I would encourage you to do so. You'll see that if we do nothing here, then this parcel over the next decade is going to generate $846,000 in taxable tax income to the municipalities, whereas even with the abatement, they will pay $2.3 million in taxes that they would not have otherwise paid. So ultimately, if we look at this, the cost of doing nothing here to the existing taxpayers, that's you and me who are homeowners here, who do pay our taxes, is giving up that $2.3 million in new revenue that we would otherwise get. And that means that, all of our taxes would be higher were we not to go forward with this abatement. So it's just something that I wanted to point out for consideration. And, thank you for, bringing this forward and for, putting together a really exciting project. I'd like to go ahead and move it, that we send to a public hearing.
Okay, we've got a couple more comments, it looks like. Mike?
I'll second it too, it's on.
Okay, so moved and seconded.
But I have just a couple more questions, if that's all right. So beyond the restaurant, how many other business slots are there in this mixed use?
Oh, that's my next question.
So we will have opportunity for a concierge, a valet, and a home care. most likely we'll have a service that will provide some sort of wellness component, like massage and certainly fitness is going to be in there. That's not going to be a paid, that's going to be amenity to the residents of the, of City Harbor. There will be eventually a little bodega kind of, what is it, like a little sports bar, a sandwich shop, where you can go and get a beer and have, I think we were talking about playing, having some games and entertainment that might be fun for, the pedestrians, the general public to come and enjoy. Something that's not too formal, just a sandwich and a beer and a watch the game kind of thing.
I vote for that.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's Guthrie, which is not part of this packet, but is bringing a 3-story medical office building.
Martha?
Is Guthrie going to be coming here separately?
I have heard that they are not pursuing a tax incentive at this time.
Okay. And back to the table, as John was pointing out, so over that 10 years, this first 10 years, the increased taxes paid more than $2.3 million, but then remember that after that, all the taxes are paid. So the new tax, the total taxes following on would build on $634,000 a year and increase that however taxes go up. So as opposed to building on a base of 92, it'd be building on 634. So yeah, it goes out forever.
Okay, Jennifer.
Well, this is really exciting. Thank you for bringing all this information to us. I just wanted to sort of, the last line of questioning that Mike started on and your answer, and I just wanted to highlight, I do think that something that's really down to earth and accessible to the community and to families, and something like you just explained in your answer is really going to be a critical piece to everyone feeling like this is space for them. And so I'm really glad to hear you making something like that a part of your project. I know the waterfront is really valuable property, and I think you're making a really high-value investment here. But I think that for all of us to feel that we can go into this space and use this property is obviously a goal that we all share. And so this is really thoughtful, the way that you've planned the project, and I'm excited to support it.
And I just note George McGonigal's comments at the legislature meeting last evening, where he indicated a real community resource is reasonably priced beer. So I put that out there. Let's put that out there. I think George is on to something.
Cornhole. Yeah.
At any rate, I believe we have a motion moved and seconded. Mike, did you have something further?
I do, but it doesn't have to be answered now. I'd really like to hear more about this loop you're going to put in for the heat recovery. What's up?
Okay.
The loop they're going to put in from the...
Now's the time. Do you want to speak further to that?
So it's basically, and I'm not an engineer, but there's a air source heat pump which draws energy from ambient temperature of the air. This is, there's geothermal, which draws energy from ambient temperature of the ground. This is doing the same thing, but with the water passing through. And I am told it is far more efficient that way. Water's a much better way to transfer energy. So we're taking a fraction of the amount of water that's going through the pipe, taking it out for a little bit. I forget the percentage or the numbers. Running it through a heat exchanger, so obviously that water's never actually going through the building itself, and then returning it to the pipe where it's going to head to the lake.
So the pipe is going to run underneath, obviously.
The pipe's there. Yeah.
Where it's, if I may add.
The large effluent pipe, it's 6 million gallons a day or so, it actually runs between, oh, my pointer. It runs between the two buildings right here, 30 feet underground-ish, or 20 feet underground. So that's already there. We're lucky enough, and that's why the owners felt it was really important to utilize it since it's there.
Right. And if I may add, just technically how it works and where you are actually saving the energy is because that water is at a temperature of, on average, 55 degrees. So you don't have to heat and cool it as much, and that's where you're saving the energy.
No, yeah, I get how they all work. I mean, my friend has one in a pond that does the same thing, but I got to tell you, the thing I like about this project is you're utilizing existing things already. Like, we're going to utilize the golf course in a way. We're going to improve the golf course. And now you're telling me about this, well, the pipe's already there, and we're going to utilize that energy that's already in the ground to, offset this use. I think that's kind of a really interesting feature of this project. So.
And another important point to that is that not only are we going to, but Guthrie's also going to utilize this system as well.
Cool.
Okay, Leslie?
So I appreciate the early response to the members and representatives of our labor union about use of local labor. And if I heard you correctly, the contractor, or I don't know who it is, I don't know the terminology, is out of Elmira, whoever the main company is, and that company is committed to using local labor. So that, in reference to what Jennifer was saying, as long as we're using people who are within our community and we understand contiguous communities as well will have jobs, that there's also that sense of ownership that we have a part in this. And so I want to make sure that we are clear that this is what we're doing and we're holding our contractors' feet to the fire to keep our employees, our local folks employed on these projects. So thank you for that response, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our representatives that, yes, this indeed is what has happened.
We're going to get to vote pretty soon, but let's see, Martha, you got
Yeah, no, this is an important one, because when did you hope to start construction this spring?
Yes, roughly.
To open when?
About a year and a half afterwards, phase
Because I
one.
just want to know how long I have to clean out the barn before I, because it's down here, so. All right, thank you.
Okay.
On the same page.
All right. I would suggest what's before us is a motion to accept the application and to move this to a public hearing. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous, so nobody opposed. Great. I would ask if we could just take a couple-minute recess, because I'd like to look at these pictures up close, because I can't really see them from here, even with the laser pointer. So 2 minutes, and let's sit back down.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have old business, Arrowhead Progress Report. And Heather, maybe you just want to give an introduction on, we received an inquiry?
We have received an inquiry from the developer. I will report that the project is being built. It's under construction. It is moving forward. Mike Sigler, it's his district. He can acknowledge that it is happening. They have gone to the village to request a modification to their PUD, requesting that they be able to sell the units rather than rent the units. So in conversation with Russ Gensel, we've determined that, the IDA would need to approve that as a modification to the original project.
And I have a question for our council. Is this a subject that can be discussed in executive session?
Yes, given the history of what has transpired essentially over the last 2 years, this can go into executive session as we are discussing the financial information of a specific entity and the potential for litigation.
Okay. Is it the sense of the IDA to discuss this in executive session? And if so, would somebody make a motion?
Well, we can do it at the end of the meeting. So if other people want to
I mean,
leave,
we also still have the.
Well, we also have the
TCDC meeting, right?
TCDC.
Can we just table that for an executive session after the TCDC meeting?
The one thing is we're live streaming. If we could indicate now that we will go into executive session after the TCDC meeting, that we will come out and go back into the IDA for the sole purposes of executive session, and we do not anticipate taking an action after that time.
I'll move that.
Okay. Second, Laura seconds. All those in favor? Thank you, everybody. Okay, that way we can continue on. The next item is Chair's Report, and I had a request from Laura to discuss some discussion of substantial change, which was an issue that came up at a prior IDA meeting, and she thought it would benefit from just talking about it a little bit. What's a substantial change to a project that it should come back to the IDA? Laura, do you have something you want to lead off with?
I was reminded of this when I read the minutes, and I recall that as we discussed at a prior meeting, change to the Herald Square project, change in number of housing units and the retail units, there was a question in my mind that was raised: what constitutes a significant change such that there should be a resubmission? I don't know about a new public hearing, but I recall us at least talking about clarifying what constitutes a substantial change, because that's not clear in my mind.
Russ?
Yeah, this has happened not infrequently with many IDAs across the state, where projects progress and things change as the projects are either under construction or developed. There is no bright line rule in the IDA enabling legislation which says if there's a 10% change in the square footage or 10% change in the number of units that you have to go back to the board or have another public hearing. With respect to the public hearing component, we are required legally to give a general functional description of a project. We recommend that if there's a 10 to 15% variance in square footage or acreage, that you may want to consider going back to and reopening a public hearing. It really depends, though, if you have a large project that has a lot more square footage, and there might be a 5% change. So I'm not trying to punt, but there's really no bright line rule. And in fact, none of the IDAs that our firm works with, that I'm aware of anyway, have a specific policy. They basically rely upon council to say, hey, look, on a number of factors, is this a controversial project? Were there people participating in the original public hearing? Does this project have support? And if the variances are de minimis, then make the board aware of those changes and proceed. So you're certainly within your right to come up with a policy. I don't know of any other IDAs that have a specific policy that would require going back to public hearing.
And perhaps that's not necessary, and that wasn't really the crux of my question, but it would be interesting to know on a project such as that one referenced, when there is a change that would bring any changes to the financial picture of the project. You know, with fewer housing units and more retail units included, does that change the financials of the project? And that was really one of my concerns.
Yeah, the easy part is the public hearing and whether or not we have to come back to the board for approval because of the opinions that we deliver on your behalf. As far as the business decision of the board and the impact of the financial assistance that you've approved based upon numbers that have changed, that's relevant and important. And I think should be considered and brought back to the board, which I think we did in Herald Square.
Yes, with the Herald Square project, I did ask for new pro formas and new projections. The costs have gone up, their revenues have gone down. The financial need picture is quite significantly worse than it was before. And so I documented all that in the file with the amended, with this recent amendment that was approved. We changed the language in the closing documents to indicate the new number of units and all of that.
Yeah, and if that coin is flipped and the financial change is to their benefit, you may want to consider the financial assistance that you originally approved.
John?
I just, from my own perspective, I think that, well, you know, the question of whether or not a project would qualify for an abatement in its sort of later configuration is certainly important. I think that there's also, you know, a lot that goes into these applications, and I think that any time there's a variation from what, you know, was expected in terms of the unit mix, the financial projections, et cetera, I think that should come back to us, whether or not we have to send it to a hearing. I would like to see us have a policy where, you know, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be a particularly complicated resubmission, just as something that says, you know, this was planned to be, you know, this many apartment units and now is this many, this was planned to be this many square feet of office and now is this many, and, you know, we have reevaluated the financial need picture and still find that this project qualifies for financial need. I would certainly vote in favor of that, but just, you know, I think that it's important for, you know, when we've documented a project in a specific configuration and voted on a project in a specific configuration, to see that come back before the board just for approval, if, you know.
Remember, the application is a contract that they sign, and they represent that the facts and information they've provided are accurate to the best of their knowledge and are required, if that changes, to come back to the board. And it's been, most projects have been pretty good about it.
Yeah, we also have some language in our annual reports that we ask all of the projects to fill out that asks if there's been any significant changes to document them. And they sign and certify that every year as well. So, you know, I can certainly bring that information forward.
Okay, Martha.
I guess the devil's in the details. I don't want to become the Attorney General looking for an offering plan that says, you know, what do your light fixtures look like? So, so what's significant? And I mean, is it you've changed the mix of 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, or? I think if we're trying to set a policy, where do we draw that line?
My suggestion would be to continue to do what we do, which is if there's a change, Heather and I talk about it, and typically we have concluded that it comes back to the board. If we're talking about 100 square feet or a 10-acre project's really a 10.1-acre project, in my view, that's a waste of your time to reconsider that.
But in every case where the square footage has significantly changed, the use in the building has changed, there has been discussion with the developer. I mean, when we did the PIF for BJ's, there was never a gas station. When they built the gas station, that's not part of the PIF. It was not part of the contemplated project. We've had manufacturers. We had one that they were going to do a 20,000 square foot expansion. They ended up doing 32,000 square feet. The board had to review that. It was not the project for which it was approved. If they came in and said, you know, this is going to be a residential building, and then decided midstream it was going to become a conference center, a completely different use. You know, that's the kind of stuff that this is not the project that was approved. And now that I know that the mix of units within the building might be an issue, I mean, I certainly will raise that with projects as we move forward.
Okay, Jennifer?
I mean, I generally think that, you know, the dollar value of the abatement threshold has been a good number as one indicator. I do think projects change. I wouldn't want to see us come up with like a really hard and fast policy, but, you know, just to make sure that we can provide guidance to staff, you know, maybe there's if greater than this percentage of total change of what's actually going within those square feet of the, you know, if it's greater than a 25% shift, or is it, you know, I don't know if there's some guideline that we could come up with that we all agree is a substantial number or substantial percentage of project change or use change. And that way, again, you're still going to be wondering, well, is that enough units of a change? How many, is it every little change, or is it only things that we would consider major?
Maybe what I could do is come up with a section to put in the application where they are required, if there's a change in the square footage use, and if it's to the extent it's residential, the number of units or the breakout of units that they're required to advise council and executive staff, then we would determine whether or not to bring that back to the board.
And I guess I know that it could scale really differently depending on the size project, but to me, if it's like 10% or less, it's not substantial. I guess depending on the project size, that could be 2 units or it could be 20 units. So, again, just some maybe food for thought.
Laura?
Yeah, I'm certainly not interested in micromanaging and talking about light fixtures or anything like that. What struck me in this particular project, though, was the reduction in number of housing units. And as we have concern about housing, availability of housing units, that decrease struck me. And actually, it was very good to have the tour organized, and I did get a tour. I looked at one of the micro units, and after looking at it, I can understand why they reduced the number of micro units, and so that made sense. But had I not gone on the tour, I would have just had a question, why are we reducing the number of housing units? So, that was why I thought it was important to at least have this discussion.
Okay. John?
I'm yield my time.
Okay. Anything further on that subject? Okay. I'm not sure we got to any definitive answer, but I think we helped clarify. So that was good. Staff report. Fourth quarter 2019 financial report.
So you have in your packet for the IDA year end, these will be adjusted by the auditor to account for some additional fees that we received after the first of the year and some miscellaneous expenses. But I just wanted you to get a first snapshot at where we ended up at the end of the year.
Okay. John?
Is our ending balance too high? There was some discussion of that in a previous meeting. It's over 500,000. Is that a problem?
If it's over 600,000 with any reserved expenses that have already been approved, we have to report. I have to report to the county legislature and let them know if there's any plans for what we're going to do with those funds.
So we plan to have one of those reports after a year in 2019?
Yes, once we have the audit and we have the final numbers, then I'll be able to report.
Okay, Martha?
Yeah, this is about that. And we missed the January meeting, or there wasn't enough business for a meeting. So maybe we talked about this in December and I've forgotten, but we had a committee meeting to talk about the use of IDA fund balance and whether it's IDA and TCDC. And I'm looking at the two of them together, and if these numbers hold, we're well over 1.2 million.
And then we would reserve the MOU with TCAD, so that'll put us back down to about $800,000.
Okay. Did we have the report out in December from that fund balance committee meeting?
The minutes to the January meeting are in your packet.
Right.
The December minutes didn't end up in here, and I'm not quite sure why. The Finance Committee did meet and started talking about, things that we might be able to do and coming up with a policy to review participating in some way in existing projects or new projects. And there's one on the Development Corporation's agenda today to sort of look at and consider. We did not, at this point, a policy has not been drafted, but there were some very broad brush guidelines that were discussed, I think, in both of those meetings. Am I characterizing that
The committee
accurately?
meeting was in December? I'm sorry.
There was a committee meeting in December and one in January.
Okay, so and minutes of both of those committee meetings we haven't gotten yet.
No, the January minutes are in here, but I'm not sure why the December minutes weren't in here.
But usually, like you see the audit committee, there's a page of minutes of the audit committee.
Yes, the Finance and Audit Committee was the committee that met on January 16th that discussed this. The Finance and Audit Committee also met in December. I'm not sure why the minutes didn't end up in here, but they should have.
The committee picked up on the discussion surrounding use of fund balance that began at its last meeting. Okay. Be good if there's a little more information in the minutes so we know what we said. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Anything other on staff report, Heather? We good?
I brought for you, I'm just going to hand out copies of TCAD's accomplishments for the year. These also include in here a review of all the IDA projects and some of the policy and discussions that we had at the IDA. So I wanted everyone to just have a copy of that. And, you know, we are busy receiving project information from all of the active projects, and the Paris reports are due in the end of March, so I know we'll be really busy in March. And I was at my state association, met with a number of IDAs last week in Albany, and I gave a presentation on the IDA's solar policy and our enhanced energy policy, got lots of comments, really good feedback. We're definitely being bold and aggressive when it comes to energy reduction and carbon emissions through the IDA. And I picked up some little tidbits about what my other IDAs were doing. I'm particularly excited by the Orange County IDA. They have started funding accelerators that are very much community-driven, rather than an incubator where you might have a business idea and you get resources to figure out if you want to start and then launch your business. An accelerator is more short-term in nature, that you have to actually already have a business, and there are similar kinds of resources. But in Orange County, they've done this in several of the smaller towns, and they go in and do a community process to identify where the potentials might be. And one of their low income communities, they started an accelerator for women to learn to sew, and they're sewing very high-end handbags and earning a living now. Really exciting things. They did an accelerator around hemp and hemp-based businesses. So Jamie Johnson, my counterpart in Steuben County, and I are going to go down in April after the Paris reports are in and take a look at some of their accelerator work that they're doing.
And just to have a repetition of our conversation, I would be very interested in having somebody come and present to this IDA on that issue, because I think there's some real opportunity in our community for driving creation of local business. If the rest of the IDA is interested in that, I'd love to hear it. Yes, looks like would be. Okay. Good.
And that's it for my
All right.
staff report.
We discussed the committee minutes from the Finance and Audit Committee. I guess we can pick that up in more detail at our next meeting, because there was some interesting discussion on that use of fund balance. Approval of meeting minutes, December 11th, 2019. Do I have a motion? Martha moves, Leslin seconds. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Unanimous? Great. Okay. Our next item is adjournment. I would ask us to recess as we have the executive session. And we will recess and go take care of the Development Corporation business, and then resume and hold executive session. But there will be no further live stream or need for live stream. Yes?
Wait, the TCDC doesn't get live streamed?
Does not get live streamed.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Do I need a motion on recess, or all in favor? Okay, we're recessed.